I'd call to order the Clive City Council meeting for February 12th. Would the clerk please call roll?
Mayor Edwards.
Here.
Council members Weaver.
Here.
Judkins.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Hawker.
Here.
Gasparotto.
Here.
We're all accounted for. If you would rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda.
Approval. Second.
Motion is second to approve the agenda. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The agenda is approved. Next up, we have citizens presentation. This is the opportunity to address the council on any item that is not on the agenda. If you do wish to address the council, please approach the podium and identify yourself. In the meantime, Pete will check and see if there's anyone online who wishes to do so. No one online, Pete, and no one approaching us. Very good. Just as a reminder, for everyone present, we follow the pillars of character counts and expect everyone in the chambers to follow those principles. Next, we have consent.
I will move approval, and I'd like to pull off 8 and 26 for further discussion.
And that was 8 and 26.
Correct.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Would the council please vote? And the clerk please post that vote. And that's approved by a vote of 5-0. Eric?
So 32,000 is a big change order, Richard, and I just want to have a chance to give us a little more color and rationale behind that, just so people can have more information on that in the council as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the $33,000 at Land Park, the change order is for winter condition work for getting the restroom building going. Originally, as the construction was planned, the hope was to have the block in time so they could construct the block of the restroom before it got too cold. The block supplier was not able to get that done into the city till about December 1st. So in order to make sure we kept the project going on, we authorized winter working conditions so they could keep working through the winter. I'm pleased to say that they actually have that done and allow the project overall to stay on track to be open here in late May and early June.
What specifically did they do?
So a big part of it is putting up scaffolding around the area where the restroom building will be, putting plastic up and then heating it to make sure that they could put up the concrete blocks and the mortar between them at an appropriate temperature so we don't have issues longer term.
Okay.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? So that's very common in new construction with maintaining the foundation on concrete through the winter months. So it's not unusual at all.
Yeah, and the original hope was that they would have had it done before it got too cold. But as we all remember, it went from nice weather to cold right at the end of November there, early December. So we unfortunately didn't get there. So that's where the extra.
And I understand it keeps
Yeah.
us on our regular schedule. We want to have an opening by summer for client customers. So certainly understand that. Thanks for the information.
Absolutely.
Second is on the second here.
Creative.
With group creatives, yeah. So as I'm reading through that, I'm trying to get a good understanding. So this is for what specifically are they doing?
Yeah, so what they're doing is they're helping kind of facilitate between the city and the artist to help develop this new kind of format for the art along the trail. This was the listening fields, which is going to be different than the pieces putting down. And what they'll do is kind of be the intermediary and kind of help guide and develop that so that we're able to get the best possible product. That's an area that we don't have a lot of expertise in, and Group Creative brings that skill set and expertise that helps us to work with the artists and get the right product for that. Also, part of that was funded through a Bravo grant as well.
So with that, we've never used a consultant before with any of the other. How come we need a consultant for this one now?
So we actually did use on the aquatic dance across the street. We worked with Group Creative as well. They facilitated that kind of same role where they worked with us and the artist to help get the right product.
The other thing that I wasn't sure is it said client agrees to pay group services $16,500, but it only says 1,500.
Yep.
And where's help me understand that.
Yeah. So what they'll do is we'll pay them all of that and they'll pay the artist the $15,000. And then their service fee is the $1,500 to help as part of that.
And then the city's on the hook for 8,800, I believe.
Yes, correct. Yep, and the
So-
rest was covered by a Bravo grant.
Right. And typically in the back, and previous, art along the trail,
Mhm.
the Bravo grant has covered the whole thing, correct?
It used to, but we haven't for several years been able to get a Bravo grant in the way that they changed those. Those are actually were for the past 5 years have been funded out of the city's public art funds.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I'm still, I know, and I understand the rationale from wanting to change art along the trail to a new format right here. More cities are looking at this type of art, so it's a little harder. The concept's been around for what, 10, 12 years now?
I would think so. Maybe Matt knows
Something
exactly
of
how
that
long it was.
nature.
Art along the trail.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it's been around almost
15?
15 years because when I first came here, I think I did the first year. So 2011 was the first year. And one thing I'll note here too is, I think if I recall, Richard, this is also part of the grant, and the whole program is part of the 250th celebration as well.
yeah, this is
And
part of
Clive being one of the locations in Iowa, and this was part of that, correct?
Yeah. So it's part of a larger Central Iowa public art project to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the country called Declaration. So we'll be one of the sites where we'll implement that. So, and also, I know when we talked about it previously, we'll evaluate, get some input from the public to see the reaction of this. Did they like a different kind of layout of this art along the trail, or would they prefer we go back to something like that in the future after this?
Did Parks and Rec approve this concept?
Yes, they've talked about it.
Okay.
Late last year. I'd have to get the
Is there a
exact
vote
date.
on that? Did they talk about it or did they vote on it?
I believe they just talked about it as one of their discussion items, but I can check and get that back to
Who
you.
made the decision then
In terms of what?
to go with this artist? Was that a staff decision? Was it Parks and Recs to move forward? That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, it was a combination of staff made a recommendation to the Parks, Recreation and Public Art Board. And then we applied for the grant that we authorized through the city council.
Well, I know we've had this conversation before and I'm going to support it. I just have, the whole concept of an audio file on a walking trail seems a little foreign to me. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be very interested in understanding how it works, how the public reception of this and if it's definitely worth the escalation of cost with this.
Yep, absolutely. And I totally understand on that. It's quite a little bit different for me as well. So I'd be interested to see how the
I want
public's
to see how many
reaction is.
people riding their bikes are actually stopping to listen to whatever this is.
Yeah, no, we're definitely gonna do some evaluation to see, is this a nice pivot, or do we want to pivot back to where we were with the art along the trail?
I'd
So
like to see the metrics on that.
yeah, we'll see what we can come up with and present that back to the council.
Thank you.
Yep.
Move approval for items 8 and 26.
Second,
Motion second, for discussion, seeing none. Can we take that vote, Matthew? Would the council please vote? And will clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next up, we have a public hearing on Alice's Road. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, Your Honor. It was published January 21st, 2026 in the Des Moines Register.
Thank you. Jeff?
Mayor, Council, good evening. This is the time and place for the public hearing regarding the Alice's Road Reconstruction Project Phase 1B. We took bids on February 5th. We received 5 bids, low bid from Mainline Construction in the amount of $2,611,078.91. It's a little bit of a switch from last year. Last year, or Phase 1A was awarded to CTI and Mainline was the sub. This year, it looks like Mainline is the prime on it as we move forward with it. We've worked with Mainline before. Mainline has worked with us on Clark Street and on Harbach both. So very familiar with them. While the bid's a little bit above for 1B, it was well under on 1A. So overall for the project, we're good that way. And staff recommends awarding Mainline.
Any comments?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion second, close the public hearing. Before we do, is there anyone in the chamber or on the line who wishes to address us on this matter? Seeing none, would the council please vote, and would the clerk please post that vote?
I had to e-vote to get it to work.
What'd you have to do?
Hit the e-vote.
Okay. There you go. Got your things.
Here? Yeah. Okay. Never seen that.
There we go. And that passes 5-0. The public hearing is closed.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
Motion second to approve plans and specs. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move to receive the bids.
Second.
Motion second to receive the bids. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
And I'll move to resolution awarding the contract to Mainline Construction for $2,611,078.91.
Second.
Motion second to award the contract. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next up, we have the public hearing on the residential pavement rehabilitation. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, Your Honor, January 21st, 2026 in the Des Moines Register.
Thank you, Matthew. Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. We received bids last week on a couple street rehab projects for this year, the first of which is our full depth concrete patching in residential areas. We will be north of Hickman in the 152nd Street area this year. Received 3 bids. You have that breakdown in the packet. Concrete company was Red Low. We've worked with them on several similar projects in the recent past and are looking forward to working with them again. So with that, we'd be looking to award to the concrete company for the listed amount. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Good.
So Jim, in this residential neighborhood, and we're doing PCC, are we going to be closing the entire street or just portions of the street so the residents can get through to their homes?
Yeah, on our patching projects, we limit the contractor to 1 lane, so they'll do 1/2 first. I mean, it is a little bit congested when they're pouring that back, but our message to the neighborhood is that we'll try to maintain 1 lane of traffic at all times.
Okay, and we'll be doing our normal communication, I'm assuming,
Yep.
to all those residents. Is there any utility work going on with this or just the concrete?
Just the patching.
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion second to close public hearing. Before we do, is there anyone in the chamber or online who wishes to address us on this issue? Seeing no movement, would the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? Public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specifications.
Second.
Motion second to approve plans and specs. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move to receipt of bids.
Second.
Motion second to receive the bids. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And the clerk please post that vote. That passes by a vote of 5-0.
And move the resolution award the contract to the concrete company for $479,233.50.
Second.
Motion second to award the contract. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And the clerk please post that vote. That passes by a vote of 5-0. Next up,
See what happens when you get on the council?
we have another pavement rehab project. Did we publish the appropriate public notice?
Yes, Your Honor, it was published January 21st, 2026 in the Des Moines Register.
Thank you. Jim?
Yeah, the second project is our asphalt overlay in residential neighborhoods. This year will be predominantly in the same area, just south of Hickman, primarily between 152nd and 149th. The main east-west runs there are on Hawthorne and Rosewood. 3 bids again received. Des Moines Asphalt had the low bid. Again, worked with them in the past on many similar projects like this. So we'd be looking to award to Des Moines Asphalt for the listed amount. Happy to answer any questions.
They do an outstanding job out there too. Jim. They're very, very cognizant on the work they do. They're quick. I heard nothing but positives of the work they did in Country Club West.
Other comments? Ted?
So I noticed that this is in Sadie's neighborhood. And so is that just like a coincidence that we're trying to butter up our newest council member or what's going on here?
I go where I'm told.
Just check.
Seeing a trend occurring here, Chad. Move to close public hearing.
Second.
Motion is second to close public hearing. Further discussion? Before we do, if there's anyone in the chamber address the council, please approach the podium, or if there's anyone online. Seeing no movement, would the council please vote? And the clerk please post that vote. Public hearing is closed by a vote of 5-0.
Move the resolution approving plans and specs.
Second.
Motion is second to approve plans and specs. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And the clerk please post that vote. That passes by a vote of 5-0.
Move the receipt of bids.
Second.
Motion second to receive the bids. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And the clerk please post that vote. That passes by a vote of 5-0.
And move the resolution awarding the contract to Des Moines Asphalt and Paving for $902,983.28.
Second.
Motion second to approve the contract. Further discussion? Seeing none, will the council please vote? And will the clerk please post that vote? That passes by a vote of 5-0. Thank you, Jim.
It's true.
Pete, you're up with our AI policy.
Thank you, Your Honor. So as noted in the packet, this is a continuation of the council's consideration of the draft artificial intelligence use policy for the city of Clive. During our initial discussion at the first January meeting, there were some questions raised specifically about one of the ways that we said we would not use artificial intelligence. Specifically, it was we will not use it to covertly gather sort of biometric information on anybody. And the question was then, are our cameras that are inside our public lobbies actually able to do that? And in fact, they are. They're the types of cameras that if you look at them in the Vigilon system, it can actually see you in one part of the building and then sort of watch how you move through other parts of the building, similar to what happens in airports today. After some consideration, we think that we can resolve that issue by posting a sign in our public lobbies that says, for your awareness, these premises are under video surveillance. Common sign that you see at a lot of lobbies when you go into buildings. We think that solves the problem of covert. Though it's still important to know that these technologies keep evolving and we'll want to stay on top of exactly what their capabilities are so that we aren't doing something that we've outlined as prohibited or something we won't do in our AI use policy. Beyond that, there's no language changes and staff would recommend approval.
Thank you, Pete. Questions or comments? Otherwise, we need a resolution.
Move the resolution approving this Clive artificial intelligence use policy.
Second.
Motion second on the AI policy. Further discussion?
Mayor, as an addition to the council's awareness, after this policy is approved, we will post it on cityofclive.com so it's public and everybody knows what we are and aren't doing. We'll also list some of the ways that we are currently using the technology, so we're perfectly transparent. And we'll create a unique page for the flock camera system that will be posted on the police department's page. It's largely based on what our friends at the city of Dubuque have been using. We think it's a good way for the public to know the rigor that our police department is bringing to the use of this specific tool to make sure that it is not abused.
Very good. Thanks, Pete.
We'd
Eric?
appreciate the transparency on that. I think it's important as AI is, new and evolving. And there's a lot of different uses for it that we really try to be as transparent as possible to citizens of what our uses are, and especially when they're in a public place right here. So appreciate that.
Any further comments? If not, would the council please vote, and will clerk please post that vote? And that passes by a vote of 5-0. Next up, we're ready to move into our budget. Matt?
All right, Your Honor. Well, tonight is the first of two budget workshops that'll start tonight and continue into your February 26th meeting on the city manager's proposed budget for FY 26-27. Tonight's focus area is the Public Works Department and the main funds that support that department, which is the road use tax fund and utility funds. Starting off, well, you'll have to move the slides forward now for me since you're controlling it. Starting off, well, we always kick off each of these budget workshops is the financial strategy that we talk with you all in the fall during strategic planning and how it relates to the funds that we're talking about tonight. So on the slide are the financial strategies that we discussed related to the road use tax fund in terms of how we manage reserves, have support coming in for the utilities. Of course, we'll talk tonight about the special census that's going on. Currently, we're hoping field work will get wrapped up soon and we can get a new certified census number because that really drives the road use tax revenue, as we'll talk about tonight. As for the utilities, those are also listed on the screen. Again, this just comes from that financial strategy memo. We continue, what we'll be showing you tonight is the commitment to trying to maintain Clive in that lower tier of communities in terms of our water and sewer rates. We know on the stormwater side, we have a little bit of a unique circumstance in Clive with the size of the Clive Greenbelt and the Walnut Creek that's within it. So we typically tend to be a little higher rate on the stormwater side. But when you couple it all together, very competitive in terms of the utility rates being charged to our residents and businesses as compared to the metro communities. So that continues to be a priority listed in this financial strategy and something that you'll see in the presentation tonight, along with a very specific conversation that we've been having over the last year, 2 years since Central Iowa Waterworks came to fruition and we joined, is the need to restructure our non-irrigation water rate. So couple years ago, as the council will recall, we did a tiered approach to irrigation rates, recognizing that is our peak demand driver and a significant cost to our system. Now with joining Central Iowa Waterworks and being a member now for over a year, we are now at a point where how that's funded, how Central Iowa Waterworks is funded, is not 100% variable in terms of our payment like it was under Des Moines Waterworks. So tonight we will be talking, I won't steal Liz's thunder too much. I'm already starting to do that in terms of the 70% variable and 30% fixed. And so that's the big discussion point that we want to talk through with you all tonight and some approaches and alternatives that Liz and PFM and Suzanne and Jen and the team have been working on to present to you tonight. So that's kind of the lead in terms of how the financial strategy informs the presentation and the proposals that you will see tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff and then Liz.
Evening. As I get ready to present this, I go back a little bit over the last 10 years and talk about Public Works and how it's grown. It will relate to a little bit of what I talk about later. But if you look at Public Works, we're now a group of about 36 people. We take care of all the infrastructure roads we hear within the community. Some of the additions we've done in the last few years, 2021, we added the right-of-way specialist, which was probably one of the best things we did as far as managing that right-of-way. If you remember back to the problems we had previously and who did what where, we've been very fortunate to have 2 people in there that take it very seriously and do a great job of keeping up with it. From that, we also looked at some promotions. Didn't add numbers, but we did add the opportunity for promotions for 6 of our people to go to senior positions. We also looked at some seasonal people we brought in 23, 24. It's great when we can hire them. We sometimes have troubles hiring them though. But we've been fortunate to get some good ones when we did have them. And then in 24, 25, we actually added 2 additional operations specialists. It was many years ago, I think, when we looked at the size of our organization or Public Works department, it was determined that we would add 2 more Public Works operations specialists at some time, plus another dump truck. As we reviewed that, we decided not to add the dump truck, but we did need the bodies to keep up with the work and the maintenance. As we continue to age and get older, it becomes a little more difficult and a little more work for us to do. So we did that. And then this last year, with the remodel downstairs, we had a shared administrative assistant that worked part-time at Public Works and part-time in community development, but with the organization, or not organization, but the restructuring of the way the offices are going to sit, they no longer needed that half-time. So Julia is over with us full-time and helping us out along with some other projects we have her working on. So it's been a great addition. Been there for 10 years. I left it there, keeping pace with growth. We always lag a little bit. I know the growth is about done, but we're still catching up. And as we continue to age, the amount of deterioration does grow. So there's still a little bit of growth there as far as keeping up. And we continue to deliver. I think Public Works is doing a great job, and I'm proud of the team I have over there and what they've been able to contribute, and look forward to what they have here in the future. Talking about the short-term budget.
Jeff, real quick,
Yes.
before you move on, what's your read on the pavement conditions of Shadow Creek, the northwest neighborhoods, as far as keeping up and showing any signs of spidering or anything of that nature, the quality of the concrete from the northwest neighborhoods? How does that compare with
You
other
know, that was one
aspects?
of the things, 2017, 2018, we increased this design standard.
Yeah.
But prior to that, we were seeing some deterioration fairly fast. We're not seeing that anymore. If you look at some of the long-term data from not only streets here, but other places that were constructed in accordance with the design standards we have now, they're performing very well. I think what you're going to hopefully see is streets lasting longer, which buys you some more time before you have to start the maintenance on them, allow you to catch up on some of the streets that we have out there now. As you're very aware, we've identified the areas where we have a problem with some soft aggregates, and taking some steps and measures to try to address that, and not keeping up completely, but doing what we can to get to the point where we can start the replacement.
So you're happy with the northwest neighborhoods and how that concrete's holding up then?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. When you look at the short-term request, we don't really have a lot. We have no employees, promotions requested, not too much in changes as far as the CIP that was approved. We do have one thing in here, and as we go to the next page, I'll talk quickly about the equipment. We do have one new truck in there. What's included in our budget right now, we've seen some rising costs, and we had a pickup scheduled for replacement. The cost to outfit it as it was outfitted was about $91,000. Staff looked at it and realized that we might be able to have one vehicle, not that much, but use a van, use it for a lot of our MTU, our meters and stuff like that, smaller maintenance items. So they looked at that. We've had with the addition of the staff we talked about and the growing of the department, the water supervisor has never had their own vehicle. They've always had to find whatever's available or look around to get out. Been our goal for quite a while to add that. So with the change here, we'll replace the $91,000 truck with a $56,000 van outfitted, and then add the small quarter-ton pickup. It's a little bit more than the one, but it's not a whole new purchase. And it would be critical for our water staff as they get called out in nights. And we've seen a few of those late night call outs this year, and they're going to continue as we try to catch up with the water main side of it. So with that, you see the vehicles in there. I know at one time we've been delaying our trucks. Our trucks were on 7-year replacements. We've pushed them back to 9 and 10 years. In that 10th year, we had 2 vehicles, one lose a transmission and one an engine. So we kind of know that maybe that 10th year is not where we want to keep going. So we've kept them on the 9-year for those, and our smaller or our half-ton pickups for the supervisors that don't work and carry as big a load are still on the 10-year replacement. So we're catching up there with some of those. And then again, we looked at our equipment and took the time to evaluate whether it needed replaced or not. And we have some items that we've decided to delay another year or two and push back because we think we can get some more out of them without incurring a lot of extra expense.
So Jeff, tell me about those 8 pickup trucks for $500,000.
There are the 8 trucks that we use, 1 ton, a couple supervisor ones. 2 of them are the ones that one was the transmission and one was a engine issue that we had. The others were just due and came up in the replacement cycle. Again, a couple of them were ones we pushed back from last year, and then the other 4, I think, were due this year.
Seems like they're all hitting at the same time.
Yes, yeah. So
And the message signs is that a supplement to our existing ones, or is that?
it's replacing 2 of them. Right now, we have 2 on one platform as far as programming and 2 on an old. This will put them all on the same platform for operations as the 2 newest ones we have.
And the older ones, are those still usable? Can they be sold, or?
We would recommend selling them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and then what about the dump truck?
The dump truck itself, if you remember last fall, we approved the purchase. The way it's working now, we used to have to wait on the chassis, but now we're waiting on the box and the plows and the accessories that go on it. We paid for the chassis of the dump truck. It will be paid for this year when it's received before the start of this budget. And then when it's delivered and we receive all the accessories and they get installed, we'll pay for the rest of the truck. And that's why it's kind of broke up a little bit.
And that's replacing an older one?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Total cost of the truck is 300,000.
Yeah, I thought that was low for that.
Yeah.
but Okay.
Yeah. That's why that number looks a little weird because it's really half-ish of the truck.
With the trade, well, and with trade, it's not quite that much, but
Yeah.
yeah, the total cost of the truck is pushing 300,000 now.
Right.
Okay.
But we do get some pretty good trade-in value for and sale for those trucks too.
Right.
All right, and I'm going to talk to you about the finances of the department. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for having me. So the revenues and the expenditures for the road use department, just in summary, the revenues are kind of gone up and down over the past several years. And like Matt had mentioned, we were really anticipating the census to be done this year and to collect those dollars. Now we're budgeting those for FY 26-27. And when we're looking at the cash flows that were in your packet, there's a reason why we build those cash reserves. This is so important also when we talk about the general fund in the next meeting. But revenues are really not keeping pace with the expenses. And this slide kind of shows you there that 2.18% of the revenue growth with 3.25 of the expense growth is projected into the future. So it just isn't keeping pace. We've had some lighter winters and we hope that, right, that we still are going to have a light winter this year, but that does help with overtime and that's all built into the budget is overtime and the material cost of salt. So again, we're just very mindful of what we're budgeting for in the future and keeping track of those expenditures and those revenues.
So Liz, could you go
Yeah.
back a slide, please?
Sure.
How do you get your 10.4% revenue bump without understanding and knowing what the 2026 census results are?
So we projected.
How do you get that
Yeah.
forecasted number?
Yeah, so we projected, just based on our own internal knowledge, that we'd be close to 20,000 in population from the 18,006. So we had to put a number in there. And so that's the number we're hoping to target. Now, if that number is less or number is more,
Yeah.
we'll adjust the budget to
But
reflect
that's your
that.
baseline figure?
20,000
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
Right. And if you recall, we paid that already up front to do the census work. And so we looked at like a
391,000.
return of investment about 2.5 years to get those dollars back. So, okay. Thanks for the question. Good question. So on the next slide, so the road use tax fund, actually, give me a second. I got this flip too. We have some future considerations that we're looking at to basically address the shortfall, right? In 3 different areas or scenarios, I guess, or future considerations. One being, I know we've talked about the street lighting, but in order to make some room in the road use fund is to maybe do some shifting of engineering costs. And what we're proposing for just, again, future considerations, not in this budget particularly, is to maybe reimburse our project funds, the CIP, the tax increment financing with those allocations of the engineering costs as they are related to projects. And then that would free up some space where we could provide the street lighting expenses, transfer them back to the road use fund and free up some room in the general fund. IPERS, FICA, those are all paid out of the road use fund right now. We could transfer those to trust and agency. Again, we're not proposing that in this budget, but we allocated about $300,000 of those expenses that we could shift in the future. And another opportunity to maybe shift some of the senior operations the operation specialists and utility funds in the future as well. So those are some things to consider.
So one thing that your council is going to see with both of the workshop presentations this month is this future considerations slide. Recognizing that as we've been talking around this table for a number of years, We know that at a point we're bringing reserves down to a level that the council's comfortable with in all of these funds, road use included, as well as the general fund, as we'll talk about at the next meeting. But at some point, then we need to level it out. And so what we're looking at with these future considerations is there's options of ways that we can do that. The list for road use, it's a much smaller number. In fact, it just depends too on the winter a lot of the time of whether we end up with a little bit of use of cash reserves or a surplus. So the winter can really be a contributing factor, whether we have salt, additional salt purchases in the next year or how much we have. And so the road use, once we get the census number, we know when that hits, that'll help us a lot in determining of whether these future considerations. But as is the case with a lot of these future considerations, they're shifting things around. It isn't free, so there is cost. So even when you're looking at shifting the engineering expenses, so this is the in-house design. So you heard Jim tonight of the capital projects, the PCC and the asphalt projects. Those are projects we design in-house. The road use tax fund supports the engineering division to do those designs. Now, those are capital projects. So typically when we bid out engineering services, so Alice's Road, Phase 1B, which is a much bigger project that we're using Snyder and Associates to help us with the design, that capital project has the engineering costs baked into what we show in the CIP. We don't show that for any of the in-house design projects in the CIP. So what this is saying is we could show that cost, basically paying ourselves like an internal service fund for those projects that our in-house staff are designing and engineering. So, but what that means though, is that takes more resources away in the CIP. So local option sales tax, franchise fee, the dollars that we use to actually support the construction of that road rehabilitation, you'd have a slight reduction in that number. So it's got to come from somewhere.
So at
to
what
make that
point would
work.
we make that decision, Matt? What would be the triggering?
What I would say the triggering factor is when the road use tax fund gets to a point where it needs additional support. It's not there today. But in terms of when you look at the cash flow that we included in the packet, when we get out into those out years, if we get to a point, see the challenge with the road use tax fund, it only has one revenue source, and that's road use tax.
Right.
So when we get to a point, there isn't another revenue we can tap. It's basically shifting expenses around. And so right now, the road use tax fund supports roughly 25% of our engineering division because of their design of those road projects. So again, it's not an immediate thing. It's not something we're proposing in the budget, but we're putting these ideas out here as there's opportunities in the future if we need to shift things around and we have tough choices to make. These are choices and options. We want to make sure we're listing the options. When we get to the general fund, this is like multiple slides in terms of future considerations, the dynamic between the general fund and trust and agency fund. But so we just want to put these out there as there's options. Again, we don't need to do any of these immediately in the road use tax fund because we're sitting with a decent cash balance that we anticipate to bring down further, as you've seen in the cash flow. But this is an option in the future that we could consider. And on the TIF tax increment financing side, so any project that we have that is a TIF project, Alice's Road is an example of that. We can, when we're bonding for those TIF resources, we could also look if there's any in-house design. Now, in that case, Alice's Road is an engineering services contract with Snyder. You can incorporate that into a TIF fund today. Of course, there's a lot of conversation down at the legislature of what might be eligible for tax increment financing funds. But so these are just ideas that we want to make sure we're putting on your radar as options for the future to consider if we get to a point where the fund balances are getting down to a level where now we have to level out the use of cash reserves. If that makes sense.
I appreciate having those opportunities. I mean, we understand what's coming down the road as we're, approaching build out right there and a population stabilization. So being able to pivot with opportunities and flexibility is much appreciated. So kudos for coming up with those options for us.
Yep.
We will get into, trust and agency in our next meeting. So when we're talking about, shifting to trust and agency, that means the levy would have to increase to support that as well. So we won't talk about that tonight. Okay, so the next slide is on the water utility fund, and Matt had said we're going to be spending a little bit of time here tonight. So the cash flows that were produced for water, well, the utilities, water and wastewater and stormwater were produced by PFM. And the water is showing significant capacity to hold the current expenses and the future debt with just small changes in the rates. We're proposing to reduce the water rate to 2% than was predicted a year ago. We were anticipating a 3% increase. And again, that was just more cost efficiencies due to moving with Central Iowa Waterworks. However, we're actually proposing a 0% increase, and that is for the residential and commercial fixed rates. But we are suggesting or proposing an increase in irrigation rates of 2%. And that is for the budget year. And we want to encourage, of course, conservation and then really distinguishing irrigation from the indoor domestic use. In the cash flow, you'll see there's an area in gray, and that's where Des Moines Waterworks is comparing themselves, or like that, those were our rates with Des Moines Waterworks. And then Central Iowa Water is below that. And you can see that Des Moines Waterworks was much higher. So our rates were much higher there. The utility really supports all of our CIP items, such as the water main repairs, replacements, and the University Avenue pump station on 78th Street. And then where want to talk to you about the fixed and variable rate that Matt had talked about last year, and actually probably the last couple of years. We've been reporting and talking about we're going to join Central Iowa Waterworks. Let's get a good year under our belt, and let's reevaluate the regular water rates because we are 100% variable cost. So the city's current regular rate is completely that variable rate. So we want to protect the utility financially and into the future. So it's really important that we consider this new rate structure adjustment to the regular rate. So Exhibit 3A in your packet and B, I believe, includes the regular water rate and the irrigation revenue adjustments. The city's current the city's current regular water rate structure is, like I said, fully variable, but it does not align with the fixed and variable costs that are incurred with Central Water. So now we are going to have the same rate structure as Central Iowa Water. Most of our peer cities also have a fixed and variable rate, and we'll show you some information on that. And so the fixed variable availability charge is based on meter size, which covers the fixed system costs. And the variable usage then is a base rate that encourages conservation. And then, of course, the separate irrigation rate, that's, of course, accounts for all the outdoor use that doesn't enter into the sewer system. So we did a review of metropolitan practices, which showed that nearly all of our peers are already using this blended approach. And PFM applied a American Waterworks Association, AWWA, M1 manual principle to develop the proposed fixed and variable rate structure beginning in this next year. So the M1 manual is an industry standard for utility rate settings, which is consistent. We can defend it. And it's also what we found is audit ready methodology. So that's kind of what we're all recommending. The next slide shows the 4 different variables.
And one thing I wanted to just clarify real quickly in terms of the 3A, 3B. So Appendix 3A is the status quo, 100% variable rate as it exists today. What would the cash flow look like all the way out? 3B is this proposed fixed and variable rate using the M1 manual. But as you see on the screen, working with PFM, we came up with some different options and scenarios to see how they would blend. We kept coming back to the M1 manual for the reasons Liz just mentioned. Mm-hmm. It's the industry standard. It's more defendable in terms of how it's audited. It shows the proper proportions as the meter sizes go up. And so we felt, and then we saw a number of our neighboring communities to the north and the south and the east using that same kind of M1 manual. Wanted to give you a chance to be able
Well-
to
Oh, thank you.
give you a break. And so so we wanted to show you kind of status quo versus the recommendations. And so you can see how the cash flows on the expense side are the same. The revenue total generated is virtually the same. It's just we get there with a different path in 3B with because it's roughly about $1 million, 900,000-ish dollars of what CIWW charges us. That's a fixed cost no matter how much water we use. And that's that capital cost. It's related to our peak usage. So it's thinking about, okay, the infrastructure that we need here in Clive to hit our peak usage, which, at times when irrigation is at its maximum is over 4 million gallons a day, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But then this other expense from CIWW, which is about 70% of that expense is completely variable, like we used to be under Des Moines Waterworks, which was 100% variable. So we only paid for the water we use. Now only 70% of that is paid for the water you use and the 30% fixed. The sewer utility is modeled the same way. WRA, this has been this way for as far as I can remember, even before my time, when we get to the sewer utility, it's already been structured this way with a sewer availability fee and a sewer usage fee. We're basically just mirroring that. It's not the same exact percentages. They're a little bit different because WRA's charges are a little bit different than CIWW's, but the concept and the principle is the same.
Yeah, I'll just add, in a prior life, back in the 1990s, I actually worked as a consultant for municipal utilities all across the country. And this is a very, very common, back then in the 90s, it was common. So this is not anything new for water utility. I've been surprised that we didn't have this before, so.
But at the time when we were with Des Moines Waterworks, it was 100% variable.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a need to. And then as you've heard me the last couple of years is we were going to have to do this at some point. Because if we have, for example, a really dry year, we're still going to get that $1 million rough charge from Central Iowa Waterworks, no matter how much water we used. And so if we allowed that to happen for an extended years in a row, we'd be eroding our water utility right from underneath us if we didn't mirror where our primary expenses are coming from, if that makes sense.
So good. This slide shows what you just said. So he talked about it being almost $1 million, and each one of the versions that PFM put together is roughly $916,000. So we're not generating or trying to generate different dollars. It was like, this is what we need for our assets to be covered. And so the first version, of course, is meter size base charges that were from the M1 manual. And then version 2 has a simplified weighted average structure with just 3 meter size tiers. Again, kind of just giving some other options. The fourth one is a higher multiplier that applied universally across the meter sizes. And then the fifth one is a weighted average structure with 4 meter sizes. And so, as we said, all options really produce the similar revenue amount. The difference is just equity, simplicity, and really how closely charges that reflect our system demand. So staff and PFM recommended the M1 based approach, just because, like I said, it's defendable, transparent, fairness, and just it really kind of aligns with our accounting standards as well. And it's helpful that it matches also what a lot of other cities are doing as well. So we'll get into showing you what that looks like.
So question
Yeah.
for Matt and or Pete, with this and the sewer change, how would this impact Walnut Creek Little League?
So that is something we've been discussing. Seems like it always comes up with them. They are handled a little bit differently because they are basically just irrigating. So one way we're looking at is they have a 4-inch. Are they the 6? They're actually the 6, I think.
They're
one of the
yep.
2
So
6s.
one of the 2 6s?
So they have a 6-inch. This would change this ratio a little bit because really that 6-inch would be 1, not 2 customers. So what we're looking at with Walnut Creek Little League is it's not really fair to have them charged as a 6-inch when they're just using it for irrigation. When you have a typical 4, 6, 3-inch, folks are using it like car washes or heavy water users, right? Little League is using it for irrigation.
Right.
So what a solution that we've been discussing at a staff level is part of the challenge is we've never set up a separate meter on their concession building. which is really where they have water use that should have a sewer charge on it. And it never has. So that is something that we're looking at correcting. So if we did that, that would be a small meter. It'd be more like the 3/4 inch, level meters. So they wouldn't have the big fixed cost in the months that, they're going to have their system shut down
Yeah.
for a good chunk of the year. And so what we're working on, and I know Councilmember Weaver, you and I have talked about this, and Pete and I have been discussing it, is coming up with kind of because we have a lot of these little pieces, whether it's stormwater and now this, some other things, is actually having an agreement with Walnut Creek Baseball that stipulates all of these things and clearly outlines what the expectations are, and putting some onus on them too, to make sure that they're doing things the right way. And then we can outline that, because our goal would be is whether they would be fair to charge them at the 6-inch level for how they're using the system. It's something we're working through. So that's something we're anticipating to try to address before this change is implemented in the spring.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Lots of communication. So the next slide, I'll kind of take it kind of slow because a lot of data that right there. So this slide kind of helps you see what the changes would be. So the right column is really under what we currently have, the rate structure. All the customers, regardless of their meter size, they pay a total of right in the middle, the 44.55 for 5,000 gallons. And then you see the blue is 12,000 gallons. Those are really your commercial rates. That's what they currently are paying per those number of customers, per those meter sizes. That first line column is the meter sizes. Shifting over to that other column, under there we have the volumetric water rate decreasing to the $7 rate, the per thousand. So the cost would be $35. And with the availability rate, they're going less than the 44.55. They're going to 40.10. So you can see the first 3 tiers are going to be less than what they're paying currently. And those last 4 water meter sizes, they would be increasing. So what are the impacts? Smaller meters, obviously, you'll see the decrease or the minimal charge for total monthly costs. Again, just the 1 inch and the 3/4. And then the mid-size and larger meters, they'll see a higher total monthly cost, and that's driven by the larger fixed availability fees.
So this is the big
Mhm.
this is the big question.
Mhm.
This is the big policy question shift here that we need feedback on. So when you're doing these that was part of the reason why we were looking at a 0% for the non-irrigation rate, because this is basically a reset year. And we didn't feel like we wanted to pile on that on top of this, because it would have made it really confusing and hard to explain. So in theory, your higher meter size customers are the ones that you have to make sure you have the infrastructure to support, right? It's your fixed cost. That's why the M1 manual is structured the way it is. But when you're implementing that live in the system and you're transitioning to it, it is going to be a shift from residential customers to commercial and industrial customers in terms of the cost. And you're seeing that on this slide. So the vast majority of our customers, all but basically 38, are seeing either their bill stay roughly the same or go down for 1 year as we do the transition. But those 38 customers that are on the bigger meter sizes are going to see a bump up in their monthly costs. Now, what we'll show you on the next slide, don't flip it yet, is how we compare to the other cities that have similar meter size, the similar system, and what it looks like for those commercial customers. What you'll find is we're in the middle. But before I go to that, I just want to make sure this slide does a really good illustration of showing you there is a shift here. So, but that's why we wanted to keep the revenue the same for 1 year to the next. So it was easy to see what the transition was without adding on a non-irrigation rate increase.
This is based on 12,000 gallons of water usage.
We had to pick one, yeah.
Sure, which I get.
Right.
But so for these larger meter sizes, is that?
It could be much higher than that, right?
Right. So
the
these
higher
numbers-
that it goes, you're right on. So let's say it's 20,000 gallons a month that they use. Well, the higher that their meter, the higher gallons that they use, then it insulates their fixed cost more. And so if they were a 20,000 gallon user, there wouldn't be as much of a shift. There'd still be a little bit of an increase, but it wouldn't be as prominent as this. The reason we picked 5 and 12 is when we show you all the rate comparisons every year, we do 5,000 for residential and 12,000 for commercial. It's all over the board of what these meter uses are, but we just picked one for an illustrative purposes. And if we want us to dig in on those 38 customers to show you
No, I guess I
spread, we could do that.
just
if you'd
point
like.
out that someone with a bigger meter may be using a lot more than 12,000 gallons a
Correct.
month. And so what we're showing here financially, it may be a much
Yeah.
larger.
We were trying to do an apples to apples.
Yeah, I
but
get it.
yeah.
I
It
get
could
it.
be 20,000, 30,000, and then, so their delta change
There
is
could be a
gonna
bit of a sticker
significant.
shock here for some businesses, basically.
Right, and so if the council's supportive of this transition, one thing that we're gonna do from a communication standpoint, as we've done with any one of these transitions, whether it was tiered irrigation or tiered stormwater, is communication, particularly to those that are impacted. What makes it a little bit easier here is we have a smaller number to work with, but doesn't make the conversations any easier. But I think it's important that the principles that we've laid out to you, the why, is what we would use in those communications. Doesn't mean they're still not gonna like it. But what I think it shows is that the city is taking a kind of industry standard measured approach to how we're approaching this transition. And to explain, this is because the costs are coming to us in this way. That's why this transition is occurring.
And so just quick math. if you
Go
don't-
to the mic.
Sorry.
So quick math for the break even on that, right? So it's $1.91 per 1,000 gallons cheaper. So if I'm paying $68, I need 35,000 gallons a month to break even on that. Just simple math, right? So it's $1.91 cheaper per, so you're just having to make up the $68 fee and the $1.91, otherwise it will cost you more, but that's the math based on how much usage you would be billing. For a simple calculation.
That's higher level math than I can absorb.
Yeah, it's too late.
So we can
Okay.
show the next.
Yeah,
when you
the
show
next slide, it's the table that compares the monthly fixed water rates with across our peer cities. Clive is proposed, the meter-based charges are competitive. They're generally lower than our surrounding communities, particularly the small, mid-sized meters that you see there, which represents the majority of our customers, like Matt had mentioned.
So that's an important point though,
it
right,
is.
Liz? Because
Mhm.
these other cities are already doing this.
They are,
right?
Yes.
yeah, they are.
And so that's something we can point to these businesses.
Right.
Yeah.
And on the next slide, we show
Mhm.
what it looks like from those other cities.
Yeah, go ahead.
Show it.
Okay.
In terms of, again, 4-inch meter, one of those ones that were in the red,
Mhm.
12,000 gallons of water usage. Again, it's probably higher per month, but even if you look at it, we're right in the middle.
Yeah.
Comparison to those ones all around, we're surrounded, other than Waukee, we're surrounded by ones that use the same M1 manual tiering for the meter rates, the availability fee.
Why is West Des Moines so much less?
In terms of their, how they charge theirs.
How they
Like their
charge
fee,
theirs.
yeah.
I'm gonna go back and look at their fee structure real quick.
They're not using the M1
Hmm.
standard.
Say that again.
It wouldn't be based on the M1 if it's not, if the math, like the two, yeah, it's not based on sorry.
It's okay. We're just recording.
For recording, it's just a different ratio. It's not based on the M1 ratios if it doesn't match.
So it should be like just up to the 6-inch and they should have them proportionately across that.
Yeah.
And they're adding some other rates on the end. and-
Yeah, so you can look and see
Spread it out.
who is using the ratios and who has their internal ratios. You can see Urbandale decided to cap it at 4 inches and not gross it up for 6 inches. Every community has decided how they want to implement this. And Ankeny looks like it's based on M1. Urbandale, like I said, is M1 until you get to 4-inch. West Des Moines has a different methodology that they chose to apply for their meters, and West Des Moines, or I'm sorry,
like
Windsor
it's on-
Heights, yeah.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
Suzanne, while you're up there, maybe we want to talk a little bit about when we say the ratio, the proportional ratio of why the M1 exists the way it does and how it tiers up.
So in theory, the larger meter size you need, the larger the flow is going to be and the greater demand on infrastructure costs there is. And so there's engineers of the world who have smarter than I am about those type of things, have decided that that's the stress they're going to put on your system based on the meter size. Otherwise, if you're not going to send that kind of flow, you wouldn't need that large of a meter. So you have to build your plant to service the larger flows, even though they may, whether they do or don't send that flow, you have to have the capacity to service it. And so that's just the standard of the larger the meter size, the more pressure, the more use, the more flow going through your plant, the harder it is going to be on the O&M and the capital of your plant.
Sure.
Very technical.
That's why she's here.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so we showed you where we sit with as compared, and again, just looking at the 12,000 gallons for a 4-inch water main. So how we are comparable and right in line. And then the next table is, so basically if you flip this chart or this slide with the next one, it shows these are our current costs right now. And we talked about the 44.55 and then it's going to go to 40.10, right? So we'll show you that. And then Clive, the commercial being at $106.92. And again, just based on our rankings, our position has improved from this year, this current year to the next year. We'll be in one spot. We'll move up. And then the same one more spot on the commercial side as well. Our buy-in to the Central Iowa Water Works system is much smaller than other communities. So I think that's, we're fortunate that our rates are really going to be in the lower tiers versus the other ones that are kind of added into the system. So with that, I'll have Suzanne talk about the new rate.
Yeah, so assuming that we go to the recommended availability charge plus usage, then this does move, keeps Clive in the second spot, second to lowest for residential based on 5,000 gallons, and the third lowest for 12,000 gallons for commercial. I will say that Clive is one of the few communities that cash funded its contribution to Central Iowa Water Works. There were many other communities that had to issue debt, had larger capital contributions. The unused purchase capacity that this Clive had was very valuable in joining Central Iowa Water Works. So things have come together very well. The rate per 1,000 gallons is much less at Central Iowa Water Works, and all of that is contributing to the fact that you have very strong cash balances in the water fund, where we can make this shift in a year where we need a 0% rate increase for normal water usage and just a 2% increase for irrigation. Internally, and by we I mean Jen, we did change how we're modeling the water cash flow. We have broken out irrigation separately, so we have the ability to put the gas down on irrigation a little bit more if we want to try and incentivize a different kind of behavior for irrigation. And so those are one of the other changes we made this year. I will say that I don't know that there's any other community in the metro that has a 0% rate increase for water this year. But there are other communities that are doing larger increases for irrigation than they are for their traditional water. So this is definitely a topic other communities are also talking about in the metro. Any questions?
And just to follow up on that, so we heard the council loud and clear. I know we talked about this a lot last year during the irrigation ban in terms of making sure, starting to transition to where non-irrigation rates aren't subsidizing irrigation.
Correct.
And so that was the reason for this decoupling. And so while we might be proposing to hold the regular water rate or the non-irrigation rate flat because of the transition to fixed and variable, we are proposing, as we'll get to in the next slides, a 2% increase in irrigation rates. And you'll notice in the cash flow, even the future years where we're showing 2% increases in the non-irrigation rate, we're showing irrigation a little bit higher. That's just an illustration at this point. So as we get a little bit further into the dialogue in terms of how we want to consider separating the irrigation rate even further from the regular water rate, now we can play around with that a little bit and see what it does in the cash flow. So we're showing in the long term that we are using some of the cash in the utility fund by design, but the irrigation rates, at least from the staff's perspective of what we've heard from you all, will be something that we'll be looking at and monitoring to drive more of the revenue in the future, because really the cost to the city of Clive for a little bit of additional purchase capacity or anything that we're going to have from a capital cost standpoint is going to be driven by irrigation usage because we have plenty of capacity for regular water usage. So I think as the council indicated to staff, it's very sound on that needing to be separated. And as we'll talk about in the future is that is kind of your stick in terms of managing irrigation uses. But of course, we've also been looking at carrots, whether it's through SQR and other practices. And I know Pete can speak to this even more too, in terms of other ways that we can encourage and incentivize good irrigation use starting this spring.
Yeah, and the last comment, when I looked around your metro colleagues on the list here, 4 to 6% is the average range of water rate increases this year. And the largest irrigation rate increase I found was 6.5%. So little data points for you.
Thank you.
Susan?
So interesting.
Maybe I should wait till the next slide. I was wanting to see a comparison on the irrigation rates too. And I'll just tell you a reason I was wondering about it. Last week at the Iowa Commercial Real Estate Association breakfast, Tammy Madsen, the director of Central Iowa Waterworks, presented to the group. And she was explaining that there is a need to generate demand for irrigation, even at the time they're trying to keep it down because they're not generating sufficient revenues to take care of future capital needs. As so long as we have to keep reducing irrigation. And so she's pulling a committee together to look at recommendations, one of which may be encouraging irrigation in the very early morning hours. So I wanted to see, what does it look like? Do we have some ability to support some behavioral changes in some way with our rates? So is the next slide the place to talk about that?
Yeah, we go to irrigation,
Yeah.
irrigation next.
Yeah. So actually, if you recall, when we first, did the tier structure in 23, we really didn't have a lot of data, but we didn't have a lot of residential concern about switching to the tiered approach. You can see from this illustration that the city has seen a reduction in the residential and the commercial irrigation, obviously because of the watering ban, the lawn watering ban that was issued last June and July. We're just seeing it on the chart that, we bill, it takes a little while to get on the billing system. So it's July and August that's showing up on the chart. Luckily, we did have some rain events that kind of soften the burden on our residents this last summer. Over time, we may see some change in that behavior that we talked about. Hopefully we do with some of our initiatives. And then of course, introducing this new fixed and variable rate structure, decoupling the irrigation rates, maybe that will help move the needle too. And like Matt said, this chart will continue to kind of track how this changes over time. So any more comments?
And, to answer your question, Councilwoman, the timing is sort of, okay, so we joined Central Iowa Waterworks, everybody became aware that peaking was really driving demand and was going to make your rates higher. So everybody went, aha. Capacity right now for water is somewhat strained. There are many capacity expansion projects in the works. And so to pay for the projects once we have the expansion is, I'm sure, what our friend at Central Water System, we don't want to change behavior too much because we're growing our capacity to meet the demand. And the demand goes down, then we can't pay for what we're building. So timing is really sort of a little discombobulated right now. The demand has outpaced the source today. The sources are being increased. West Des Moines Waterworks has expansion. Grimes has expansion. There's a Saylorville expansion. There's Saylorville expansion 2 being talked about. So more capacity is on the way. And so if we change behavior so much by the time we get those expansions all online, then it will be a different conversation. I think that's, in my mind, that's probably what she's thinking about.
But I think what's important about, that I would add to that though, is Clive and Mayor Edwards can speak to this, and staff has definitely been speaking this voice in Central Iowa Waterworks, is we got to be careful with the engineering answer on that in terms of meeting a demand that is all for irrigation, because there's a huge cost that comes with that capacity expansion, $1.3 billion with a B, $1 billion. that what has not been shown yet to all the Central Iowa Waterworks entities, and we haven't even seen it here in Clive, is what is the cost and rates to build that? And so I think from at least Clive's perspective of how we've positioned this conversation with Central Iowa Waterworks is we really need to have a conversation on what should demand be before we build. Maybe we know we need to build some capacity. That is a given, right? Some of the short-term capacity expansions, the Grimes expansion, the West plant, those are going to probably need to happen. But before we get to Saylorville 2, for example, which is a big jump and a big cost, do we need to have a conversation as a region of, do we really want to spend, and I don't remember what the number is, I think it's like 400 to 500 million for that Saylorville 2 expansion. Do we really want to spend $400 million at that point, probably just for irrigation in this region, and pay, and again, I'm just throwing a number out there, this isn't a number I've heard, but what if the regular water rates are double what they are today to get to that number? Are we okay with that? Is there a financial argument or discussion that this region needs to have? Is that something? And there's also the other lingering question out there is, can we even build that capacity with the raw source waters that we have? We saw what happened with our raw source waters last year. So where I understand that water utilities get nervous because they know that they use irrigation to float their budget, to be honest, to a certain degree. And I think in some of those conversations, this is why it's a good to have a mix on Central Iowa Waterworks of cities and water utilities at the board, because cities are talking about this a little differently than some of the water utilities are. Because and I'm not saying that the water utilities aren't thinking about this more broadly too, but it's just interesting now to see them all together having the same conversation. Because do we really, again, want to spend that amount of money when we're talking about meeting the irrigation demand that could very much grow and really is the peak demand for the future? I question that. I don't know, Mayor Edwards, if you want to comment on it as well, because I know you've been discussing this. So.
Well, yes, the capacity is not going to be available immediately, and 1.3 billion is a big number, and it's going to be very costly. As we look just at what we're looking at short term, I think one of our goals should be to do more as far as using water wisely, whether it's more soil quality programs, rain barrels, whatever, but I think we need to get ahead of it. I don't think the situation is going to improve any in the short term. And we're still going to be debating. I mean, it'll be 2029 before Saylorville comes online. Yet the demand is still going to increase. I mean, we were very fortunate this last summer to have the rain we did, but suppose we have a drought. It'll really put pressure on that, and particularly with trying to get the nitrates out. The drought can exacerbate that. So,
yep. One point maybe that we should also clarify for all of the folks who will be watching this is that at no point has CIWW or anybody I've heard involved in these conversations say no irrigation. It's the puzzle pieces that we put together that is the right type of irrigation done in the right way, anticipating future growth that in many ways is powered by keeping rates low, and then making sure there is some prioritization and ways to prioritize at the right times those core human needs. Those pieces fit together. It's a tough puzzle to fit together, but we're working on it right now very, very well as a region. And I think CIWW's track record over the last 12 months really bears that out. So much more work to be done, but Mayor, I tend to agree with you as well that the kind of change we're talking about doesn't happen quickly. Same way the capacity doesn't get built quickly. We've got a runway here that is a sufficient amount of time to start having this conversation with the customers here in Clive and more broadly the region to say, here's how we're going to water better than we do today with less waste, with more efficiency. We're still going to get great results. But we're going to also understand that we don't want those yard results to come at the expense of core human needs or keeping rates competitive, because that's what powers economic development. That's what powers great human thriving as well.
No, I agree totally with all that, Pete. I just think we need to try to plan to put more resources into that. I mean, $50,000 may not be enough.
Great.
And
Agreed.
so as we look at rates, particularly going forward, particularly as we've already seen, everyone else is really raising theirs, and we're not. In the future, we should make some adjustments, make sure we have the funds available to do these programs.
Well said.
All right. Thank you. I know like this slide didn't really answer your question particularly. So in summary, so for the purpose of, I mean, these are really kind of your speaking points, and I know Pete's going to run with them. And again, if you agree that this is the route that we should be going, this is the messaging. These are the bullet points. So really for the residential customer, it's going to reduce, right? So we already kind of heard that the proposed fixed and the variable rate structure is expected to result in equal or lower typical monthly water bills compared to the current 100% variable rate system. Again, that's just on the average of the 5,000 that we talked about. For many commercial customers, it's gonna go up. So we talked about it's gonna just be better aligned with that M1 manual, which allocates that fixed system cost based on the meter size and the system capacity demand rather than the monthly consumption. So this reflects the fact that the larger commercial meters are placed greater demand on the system. And while the fixed charges increase for them, the overall monthly bill is expected to just slightly go up for those that if you remember the chart, those higher users. So for snowbirds, they will pay a modest monthly fixed availability charge even when they're away. However, the charge is really intentionally small. For the residential meter, it should be offset by reduced variable rate. So the bills are more predictable. Instead of bills fluctuating sharply for the seasonal use, the snowbirds will see more stable and predictable monthly bills, which is often preferred for those residents that are gone for extended periods of time. For the revenue generation, under the proposed water rate structure, it's projected to be consistent with our revenues. And the proposed changes, they redistribute those revenues that are collected between the fixed and variable charges. Again, to be just structurally sound and with Central Iowa Waterworks and then also the M1 manual. For this next proposed budget, the city does not propose the increase of the overall rate. So we're transitioning into that fixed, and we said we wanted to kind of keep those like the reset, I guess we're calling that. While utility costs are expected to continue rising, the water utility has sufficient cash reserves to absorb the short-term financial impact on making this transition this year. This approach with the no rate is temporary, right? We're not going to just keep doing that. And it's intended to provide a rate stability with the new structure while it's being implemented. So this year represents the reset. We're looking forward. We're proposing that the approach is a little bit more appropriate balances covering between the fixed charges, the variable rates, and the irrigation. So it'll align the revenues with those cost drivers of the water system, and it improves really our long-term financial stability. And of course, like I talked earlier, it supports all the fair and equitable and the defensible and all those terms that we were talking about. And it really just helps us in the long term. So you can see at the bottom of the slide, that is what we are recommending is the 0% increase with the 2% increase on the irrigation rates. Any questions on water? We're going to move over to sewer next.
Susan?
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I just have a question on the seasonal residents. Is that a change to?
Yes.
It would be,
And
yep.
how is that going to be managed? Do people request it? How does it work?
For right now, because we are completely variable, if somebody decides to go to Arizona for 3 months, shut off their water at their house even, they're not using any water. No water is going through the meter. And so, but yet the city still has a cost of making sure there's water available to that house, even in the months that they're gone. So what this would result in then is even in those months that those folks are gone, I think it's $5.10 if I remember correctly.
Yep.
availability fee would still be charged. So they would still have a bill because again, the water is available at their house. And so that it would be charged. So there would be, but I would say for those same users in the summer months when they are there, or the spring and summer months, they're going to be still getting charged that availability fee, but their variable rate is lower. So over the entire year, it might actually cost the same. If you look at over 12 months, if they weren't paying for 3 months and they're paying $15 now over those 3 months where they were paying zero before, but they might be saving that back in the rest of the time that they're there because their variable rate is lower.
Yep. But they
Does that
see,
make sense?
yeah, and they see that sewer availability fee already as something similar to what we're proposing.
Right. Yeah. The sewer availability fee is already there because again, the sewer still needs to be available. The water needs to be available at the house, even if somebody isn't there. Same with Mid-American, right? They still have to have power to the house, even if the power isn't being used.
Again, this is common everywhere.
It
This
is.
not,
It is.
this is not unusual.
So
And again, the only reason Clive wasn't there is just because we had been getting charged by Des Moines Waterworks as 100% variable for as long as, I don't know if it's as long as that relationship has existed, but I know it was well before my time.
So for the first year, if the council elects to go with this type of plan, obviously the folks that do go down somewhere else and leave their home, there's gonna be some questions out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
What's the communication plan to let them know that, what the shift is?
Yep. So this is, there's a lot to communicate and it's dealing with money. So we got to get it right. So the first part of the answer is multiple months, multiple billing cycles of communications. We're already set up for. In fact, the mayor's draft letter and the March utility newsletter teases this, along with the change to a new payment system and some other changes that utility customers will be going through over the next 3 to 4 months. Second, we've built our communications team, which includes all the utility billing folks, because they're going to be frontline on a lot of this. The good news is there are a few kind of unique groups that we can work with early on, whether that's to get them to the new payment platform or because they're one of those 23 commercial customers with a big meter. We can have a size of audience there that allows us to go really person to person, business to business on that. And that will be taking place here as we get into the first part of March and all the way through until we get to the first part of April, which is when we start to see the big move of people to the new payment system and all of the communications, real robust communications about the water changes that are becoming. At that point, you all will have taken action to sort of finally vote and say, this is where we're heading. We need to make sure that that's all done so it's consistent with the direction that you all give us. Then we'll get into June. But that time, we'll continue to, on a case-by-case basis, keep bringing people to the new payment platform and then make sure that they can understand their bill. There will be a centralized hub for both of those transitions, the payment processing platform and the utility changes, so people will be able to see what's happening. And we'll be building graphics for each of those spots so that people know they can come back to it, get a sense for when they're at the right place, oh yeah, this is a legitimate place for me to pay, even though it's a little different than what I did before. Visuals also that help people understand, oh, this is how the 3 pieces that make up my water bill now, as opposed to what the 1 piece was before, which was just gallons used. But I won't sugarcoat it. For a lot of folks, this is going to be confusing and it's going to take some patience for everybody to get through it.
Pull out the Band-Aid.
Yep.
So before we move on to sewer, just want to, and we'll ask this question at the end, and so you could wait till the end, just want to get a sense from the council, Your Honor. How are we tracking with this proposal? Are there more information or different things that you would like to see us follow up on? We want to get a general feel of how y'all feel about what we're proposing here.
I like it, but I think in communicating, residents are really going to be wondering about irrigation. And so in some way, explaining that, since we only learned about it through separate discussion really today.
Yeah, I fully support. I think this is the right approach. I think we've talked about it for a little while now. I do think there's going to be some uncomfortable conversations with some of the commercial businesses, but I guess one question I have is, do we have any other kind of one-offs like Walnut Creek, Little League, that are similar to them? I don't know.
That was the only,
6-inch pipe.
That was the
my
only, I don't remember who the other 6 inch is. I don't know if you remember off the top of your head.
No,
That was
I
the
don't
one
know.
that jumped out to us, but we'll go back and verify to make sure that there isn't another one, but
I mean, we don't have any.
Walnut
golf
Creek Little League was
courses
the only
or-
one
It's
that
the
we
only
could
one
think
that
of.
was, yeah,
Yeah.
really the only.
But
one
we
that was
can,
in-
we'll circle back on that though. And if the council wants to get a general idea of who those bigger meters are, we can provide that list to you. Happy to do that.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
And one thing I will say on the irrigation side, Councilmember Judkins, to your point is, and Pete and Molly and CIWW have already been discussing this as we lead into the irrigation season, is have some specific messaging around irrigation, how you set up your systems in the spring. Because, yes, our rates are going up, but we also want to put people in a good position to only be irrigating, as the mayor was talking about, using water wisely. The irrigation rates are one tool of many to hopefully encourage people to be using water wisely, particularly with irrigation. And so there's going to be some specific messaging coming out from us and hopefully all Central Iowa Waterwork entities about, as we get into that April, May timeframe when folks are turning on their systems, to be thoughtful about maybe let's turn them on, not daily right away. Maybe think about that every other day schedule, or maybe a couple times a week. Let's start ourselves off on that good foot in the spring. So if we do face a hard summer again, which is very possible, that we have at least a smaller hill to climb than we did last summer. If that makes sense.
I'd like to report that on Monday, the Water Use Best Practices Committee for CIWW is meeting, and at that point, we have prepared a resolution to be considered by that group to be advanced to the bigger board and the executive committee on defining what that new normal is for starting this irrigation season based on what we've learned from this past year, and with a focus on eliminating waste and making sure we water the right amount, not in excess.
You know, this with irrigation, it's really a paradigm shift for a lot of people to think about as, and make sure they understand that water is a scarce and very valuable resource. And I think people are starting to get a hold of that. They're starting to understand that with, the drastic measures we had to take last year with this. So it's a constant reinforcement of that message. And, we're going to have, this is multi-year type of campaign of education.
Yep, 100%.
Sure is.
Anything else in water? Sewer?
All right, so our budget for the sewer, the revenues are stable. The budget shows no significant changes in our internal costs associated. Outside factors such as the impact with WRA. We experienced slight increases in our flows, and other WRA members are really their growth is in the flow is less than ours, so that's helpful. Rate increases are needed due to their debt obligations and our capital projects and equipment needs. So we're projecting some capital projects in the future years as part of the sewer main replacement program. We're also looking at the use of sewer to replace and supplement our road rehab and also some staff positions that we do as well. So staff is proposing a 4.5% rate increase in sewer, and we're showing an increase rate of 4.5 in the future. The next slide shows you again, kind of what we did with the water is where our current rates are. So the current rates, we remain in the same spot as we did for residential and commercial rates from last year. Very interesting future for WRA as Grimes is now joining, and then the biogas project revenues continue. And then we wanted to just point out that Urbandale is kind of always on the top there, right? So we did a little calculation. They, as you may know, they're a part of the Urbandale Sanitary Sewer District. So they have a 21 cent, it's 21 cent levy rate. And so basically on a $318,000 home scenario, it would be an additional $5.69 for residential. And it would be another $16.08 on $1 million property. So if you are comparing, we're a little bit more in line with their rates as well. We just like to point that out. That was something that we kind of promised last year when we did the presentation. So you're going to show us what we're proposing with that 4.5% increase and where we sit on that.
Yeah, so WRA has indicated to expect around a 10% increase in the WRA's budget overall annually. So to be at 4.5%, I hope the city of Clive feels good about that. That means you have a very healthy sewer fund in general. And with the changes, you're still in the third slot there underneath, one that kind of doesn't count. So maybe second. Second slot for residential. And again, that second, third slot for commercial. On average, when I look throughout the metro, 5% is sort of the average rate increase in sewers. So I think everybody's sort of been planning, knowing WRA is not going to be slowing down anytime soon. And yeah, I think things look really good. And I'll say your neighbor to the north there is also in line for a 5% rate increase. I don't know that it changes number 2 and 3, but.
But this chart shows us with the increase, but with the other communities without the increase,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yeah, I've never felt comfortable showing the rate increases for the other cities until their councils have voted on it.
Right.
So that's why we always come back and say, oh, on the current, the previous slide of here's where we moved around after everything was said and done. But if knowing that nobody's really going to stay flat here, we're very competitive in that lower third of this list. And as Suzanne mentioned, 45% of our sewer utility is WRA expenses. So if WRA's budget is going up 8 to 10% and our proposed rate increase is 4.5%, it's basically our rate increase is driven by the WRA increase in expense. If that makes sense, because it's half of our total utility.
Yeah, and so when we get the new WRA budget, we also get a 10-year pro forma for Clive that we update in our model. And so last year we were thinking it was going to be a 4% this year, but after the last update, it's 4.5%. So we're waiting to get the most recent 10-year pro forma, which I think comes next week, if I remember right.
I know they
So
were still working on it.
yeah, still in process for the next year's WRA budget, but the sewer fund is in a good position to weather whatever, and it should be pretty close to what we have in the budget, in the city of Clive's budget, I should say. So any questions on sewer?
Okay, we'll shift over to stormwater then. So in the cash flow, PFM was recommending the stormwater rate increase to 3%, and that is consistent with what we were planning for last year when the cash flow kind of has projections out. And that is also keeping up with the projects that we have identified in the stormwater or the water resources master plan. This recommended increase is the same increase that we projected, like I just said, and it also covers all of our capital projects and those that are identified in our strategic plan as well. Oh, sorry, one more thing. So again, current rates we're always at the bottom on this one. Ranking stayed the same in both categories. And the increases that other cities are really close to what Clive had in the past year as well. So I don't know if you had anything more on like what you know of.
Yeah.
Future.
Yeah, and so there are other communities that are talking more and more about stormwater. There are obviously to do any large projects in stormwater. Most of the times in our cash flow modeling, we're not using percentages in stormwater, we're using dollars. 50 cents or $1.05 is kind of the range that we're seeing in the cash flows I'm working in around the community, around the metros communities. And so, there will be a little bit of shifting probably here as communities have some larger projects, have some things in the pipeline, but stormwater continues to be a discussion and continues to drive capital needs throughout the metro as well. So
one thing I would add to this too is this utility scale wise is much smaller than the water and sewer utility. I know we talk about that a lot. Really driven by the capital investment being about half of the expenses in this utility. So yes, we do have personnel services in this utility, but as we lay things out in the CIP and knowing that we are building some capacity here for bigger projects in the future, to be able to keep the rate increase around inflation is good at this point and actually showing it, maintaining that hopefully for the foreseeable future. But if a big project comes along, a grant opportunity, particularly flood mitigation related, where we need to lean on the stormwater utility. We're trying to build some capacity in there to be able to handle some of that. But that is, it can fluctuate a lot more than the other two utilities because it's a much smaller scale in terms of its overall assets versus water and sewer.
But you would say stormwater is now more stabilized than it has been in the past, because we've done.
I
a
would
number of
100%
double-digit
agree.
Increases in stormwater.
We had some tens, we had some 15s.
Right.
And that's something that the team here, PFM staff, we're trying really hard to not have a future where you see any of those kinds of numbers again.
Mhm.
And I think with all three of these utilities, and that's why we always kind of report, what did we show you? What were we projecting last year for this year? Because we're trying to limit the swings like we've had in the past. And some of that was driven like back on the water utility because we were at the behest of Des Moines Waterworks is where they were taking their rate increase. Now we're at least at the table for those rate increase conversations. And so that helped us change some things there in the water utility where we have some more stability, but that's been our goal for all three of these.
Oops, excuse me. So as we kind of wrap up, as you know, general fund reserves are supported through property taxes, and property taxes also help a portion of the Public Works Administration, engineering, and the traffic safety divisions. Street lighting expenses, they've been dropped and with LED retrofitting. So the expenses, we had some expense reductions over the years. But we always have an option to move the street lighting, back to road use fund. I'm looking at you, Eric. As the general fund feels financial stress due to the property tax limitations. So we have some suggestions for that as we discussed earlier. Next, we just have the direction of the council. And so these are the questions for the night. Does the city council support the 0% residential and commercial water rate, and then also increasing irrigation 2%? Do you support transitioning the 30% fixed and the 70% variable water rate structure with the current, kind of from the current 100% variable structure, and then decoupling the irrigation rates, which would help us increase those maybe at a different rate in the future? And then the sewer rates that we're recommending is the 4.5% and stormwater at 3%.
Looks like we're seeing nods all around.
All
Thank
right.
you, Liz.
Thank you,
Okay.
Your Honor.
With that, the next steps are listed here. Next steps include the actions that would come before the council on the proposal in the next few months. Recognizing that the demand for stormwater continues, and staff and PFM work really hard to keep those rate increases down for water and sewer. With the changes coming with the fixed and variable rate, we are planning to have the full public education as we discussed earlier. So a lot of work to get that out there to the folks. So any questions about where we're going?
All right.
Do we need a
Thank you.
motion to set that proposed tax notice hearing?
That will be the next meeting.
Yeah,
Next
next meeting.
There'll be the second budget workshop will actually be considered an action item because you have that action to make, and that will be where we talk about the language related to that tax of hearing mailing
Yeah.
and the rates itself. So that will be an action item for the next
Last
meeting.
year.
Yep. This is just our workshop.
We are still under that provision in
Yeah.
Iowa code.
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Yep.
All right, Matthew, any correspondence?
No, Your Honor. Strategic planning.
Oh, sorry.
You can flip it over to me. Yeah. I will be brief, Your Honor, because let's just skip over.
Please.
But I was trying to be very subtle, Matt.
So again, just as a normal update on our strategic planning activities. Again, there's some items on these slides that were related to budget that I won't talk about tonight because we talked about a few of them already this evening, and we'll talk about more at the next budget workshop. Long-range financial modeling, as I mentioned previously, we did kick back working on that 10-year financial forecast to incorporate this proposed budget into that financial forecast. So we thought that since we had some recent data with the model that PFM has developed for us that shows a 10-year picture for our operating funds, particularly the general fund, we decided to push that back to March to incorporate this proposed budget that we're showing to you all. Pete, Doug, and myself continue to work with them on the second phase of that effort, which is looking at comparison cities. They've shown some criteria to us of some comparable cities that we can look at. We're kind of offering some other suggestions, and so we're still massaging that list of what are some comparison cities. Again, this is looking at cities that maybe have gone what Clive is about to go through, and they've been going through that over a number of years. What can we learn from them in terms of being a built-out community and what that may mean in terms of changes and economic development strategies and housing strategies and a whole lot of different practices. So we'll be following up on that as well. Fire and EMS study, you would have noticed last month we had a Des Moines Register article about that. Very timely, first week of the legislative session. There was some intention in that to make sure that that came out after the legislative session had started. Got some notes from some of the league folks, Iowa League of Cities folks, that they appreciated the timing of that. And we're at the data collection stage. So Chief Garcia was working with his team and our folks with the consultant team, CPSM, to collect a whole lot of data from Westcom, from our own information that we have from each of the agencies. There's been a lot of collaboration just amongst the 4 agencies to kind of have some efficiencies of how we're putting all that data together as they're doing their analysis. So our target there is to have something to you all for the summer to review preliminary recommendations by strategic planning. Regional partnerships, we talked about this back in November. DART and Polk County EMA are working through their budget processes right now. Of course, we have the reimagined DART system that has been approved to be implemented in June. And next week, I believe, Polk County EMA will vote on the initiation of a dedicated tax levy within the Polk County's overall supplemental levy for emergency management services. And as some of you know, we've been using the EMA folks quite a bit over the last few weeks, helping out with the presidential visit, and they were part of our flood tabletop that we do annually earlier this week. As Councilmember Judkins mentioned at the last council meeting, the Housing Solution Alliance has a kind of a city's ask on hold for now as they're working on bigger plans. And so that was the third piece of this particular one. So more information to come on that in the future, but we're on hold on that one for now in terms of the city's role. And the last one, organizational effectiveness and capacity, we haven't started any work on that one yet in our calendar. Alice's Road, again, y'all just awarded the bid for 1B. I will say we do have ongoing discussions happening with our dominant property owner at the corner there, Dorlin Underberg, Douglas and Alice's Road. Doug and I had a conversation with her attorney, Dan Manning. She's retained about some of the ideas that we've pitched her in terms of motivating development on those parcels. And there was very much a high interest in that proposal, and we're just waiting feedback from Mr. Manning on what that could look like in terms of amendments to the development agreement to see that happen. 86 Alice redevelopment, that just happened on the consent agenda tonight in terms of that strategic acquisition. And so we'll be moving to closing and demolition of that particular property. Hard Rock Center operations, that'll be talked about at the budget workshop. Richard will be touching on that in his budget presentation in terms of current operations and where we're at and the condition of the building. Housing preservation policies, another one that you'll be seeing here this spring in terms of the work Doug and his team are doing on potential housing programs. We talked about this in the CIP process for that initial seed money to get this started, and he'll be coming back to you all in the spring with options and ideas of what that housing preservation program could look like. Major streets and crosswalks. So we did share with the council that the MPO grant that we were a part of got half funded. Not quite half, it was a little less than half because the implementation dollars was the part that wasn't funded, and that was the bigger ask. So there is study money for University Avenue Corridor in collaboration with West Des Moines. And so right now, we've been discussing a little bit with Urbandale on 86th Street of what's the local path look like now that those dollars for 86th Street were not awarded in terms of some small practices that we could start to do on that corridor. And so we're having those discussions with Urbandale right now. Fire Station 22, we'll be discussing that in earnest at the next council meeting during the budget presentation. Water Resources Master Plan, we talked about a little bit of this tonight related to the value of our SQR and tree sale programs. And I know as Mayor Edwards mentioned, looking at maybe additional programming and resources that we may need to allocate to, again, encourage people, have those carrots out there in terms of thinking about irrigation differently. Street level projects, street level service projects, those were incorporated into the CIP. We'll do further incorporation into that. And this is really the prioritization of where those dollars, of course, tonight you awarded two road rehab projects, both in residential areas. We'll be using that new data that we have to help inform, okay, what streets are rising up to the top of the priority list for rehab, other than our intentional work that we're doing in the Country Club West neighborhoods. Speeding and safety on trails. This has been in the news a little bit here lately with a legislative proposal that was thrown out there that was I've heard has been kind of pulled back in terms of what may happen. Sounds like there's very likely going to be an interim committee is actually what we heard. I don't think I shared this with you, Chief. We heard this last night from the league lobbyist. I think Mayor, right, if I'm correct, that there's some talk about having an interim committee between sessions to actually develop a formal proposal for next session. So that was news to us as of late last night. So encroachments, we talked about that at the last council meeting. Richards took your feedback and he's developing a draft policy to bring back to you for another iteration and review, likely in March, to take a look at that. Top priority, Hickman Road. The one thing that's nice about the warm weather that we're getting, another thing that's nice about the warm weather we're getting right now is they are working up there. With our hope is again, they won't give us a date or a time frame of when these ramps can get reopened. But they are getting barrier rail and other work done that is hopefully leading to for those to reopen. I will say to the council, Clive and Urbandale are having some discussions. There's some things that the DOT has changed related to how some of the stormwater practices were installed at the Hickman interchange. We feel as cities, some of those changes were done unilaterally without our consent. And the cities are on the hook for paying for some of that. And so there is some ongoing discussions that are going to be happening with the DOT. I don't know where they're going to go yet in terms of how things were designed and implemented. And so just kind of putting that seed out there that we have some discussions to have with the DOT of how things were done and whether or not the city should be liable for paying for certain improvements that were made. Lanand Park, as we talked about earlier tonight with the work, if you've driven by there, you'll see the roof on the structures that we were talking about and actually looking at here in the next week or so, starting to pour the internal floor, particularly in the pump house and restroom facility, which really will help us keep moving things along to hit that Memorial Day target for having the park completed and hopefully a ribbon cutting in June. AI strategy, we talked about that tonight in terms of the policy adoption, and Pete at the last council meeting kind of laid out for the council some work we're doing internally. University flood mitigation plan, of course, towards the tail end of 2025. Doug went through the university scoping plan and you all received and filed that. We are still waiting on FEMA grants for some of those larger acquisitions. I know you've seen that bullet almost every time I've given you an update on this in the last year. We're still waiting on that and hoping to see some of those acquisitions come to fruition. And we continue to engage with our congressional delegation on that. Economic development. We are getting active in that space, particularly related to our Alice's Road corridor and Berkshire Office Park areas, working with Rachel and her team, feeding information in terms of the background of a lot of the property owners in that corridor, and our conversations with Underberg and her council, offering that as a resource that the city is providing in terms of connections with developers and who may ultimately develop those properties. that work is ongoing and Pete's participation in their board meetings and other discussions that they're having as a group. Greenbelt Landing across the street, again, another benefit of this nice weather, getting to move things right along. The building is basically complete. We just have some final testing to do. We need to get some fiber connections into the building so we can test some of the technology. But I walked through there earlier this week. It's looking very, very good. So we're on schedule with a lot of the improvements that are happening there to again have that ribbon cutting, big grand opening at Clive Fest this summer. Down the hall here, we are starting to put ceilings down in the lower level here. Ceiling and finishes are starting to go in. Cabinetry is starting to go in. So we are on schedule. You will in March have a public hearing, your first meeting in March, for the resurfacing of the parking lot and replacement of a lot of these beaten up sidewalks that are particularly along this stretch right here, and installing some ADA ramps to bring us into compliance with the ADA law in this parking lot. So that activity will really ramp up depending on those bids, April, particularly May. And then our hope is May is the move back in to this facility for the staff that's over at the Harbach Center. Rental housing registration, that work has been completed last fall. Non-union employee compensation study, as I talked with the council about over the last month. We'll have on the next council meeting that one-time market adjustment that I've discussed with you. We just completed our meetings with staff actually this morning, kind of a roadshow of talking through all the results of that study and the survey work that we did there. University Boulevard Pump Station, working on location discussions, but then that's another one where we're waiting on some FEMA grant, HMGP decisions that could support the installation and acquisition of a lot of the equipment for that pump station. So more to come there. Clive, West Des Moines Schools collaboration. So this is the Indian Hills Green Space in collaboration with the bond referendum project, a fairly large addition that they'll be making to the Indian Hills School. We have set a meeting here for early March for Pete, Richard, and myself to get with the school team to start putting together what a visioning scope of services framework could look like for engaging the neighborhood and the school later this year, of understanding, okay, what could the green space be? How would it interact with the facility improvements that the school is looking at doing with adding their new auditorium into that facility? How they all can work together, and how do we engage the neighborhood in those conversations? Because as many of you know, they're very passionate of the folks that live around that particular school. And there's, past concerns on traffic and trash and other items, the need for outdoor restrooms. So there's a lot of pieces to that we want to make sure get included in that process, and really setting up ourselves for engagement this fall when the next school year starts with the neighborhood. And then succession planning is usually reported on in the summer. And so that is what I have for you in terms of an update, Your Honor. Unless there's any questions, happy to.
It was brief.
Yeah.
What's that? I wasn't very brief, was I? 10 minutes. It's not bad.
Matt's version of brief.
I know.
Eric.
I know we did the flood tabletop exercise. Just wonder how that went and kind of lessons learned as far as an after action report.
We'll let Chief Garcia to speak to that.
Mayor, Council, thank you. The flood tabletop went off great, as we have done in so many years past. This year, we did make a couple changes in terms of how we kind of rolled out and utilized some pre-information, if you will. Typically, we are awarded some time with some updates from the National Weather Service and stuff like that. So we kind of implemented a pre-initiation of a T-level, which I felt worked out pretty well. Did quite a bit of back-end organizing of a lot of documents. This large plan comes with a lot of stuff. So we did do that, and to suffice some needs from community development, we implemented a dam concern during the flood, which was kind of odd, but a challenge for us at the same time. But all in all, I think it's a huge success. We got a couple things we're going to go back and look into, but I suspect in a month or two, I'll have the updates back to you to give you some more formal things we learned and whatnot, and then adoption of the new plan.
Did you work with any outside agencies, chief, or any outside communities, neighboring communities?
We did. We had a great turnout from the outside. We had, I think, the entire Polk County Emergency Management, minus maybe
Good
Dutch
chunk
was
of them
there.
anyway.
We had representatives from Urbandale, Windsor Heights, National Weather Service was there, and
And that was the first time that they've always wanted to come and see our tabletop.
Right.
And Jeff Zog, who's the main hydrologist there, who's one that I've talked to on a number of occasions during flood events. He came with another meteorologist, and so they got to kind of see what we do with the information that they give us. So that was really nice to have them. They were there the entire time during the training. So
Great.
Yeah, it's neat to have them involved, and we'll actually kind of complete everything up tomorrow. We're going to do kind of a exercise with our new damage assessment tool that Polk County has in the state. So tomorrow we'll kind of wrap up the whole thing, and fingers crossed, get ready for this year. But great things, learn some great things, and I think we're in a good spot.
And that
So,
damage assessment tool is something that we really put a lot of emphasis on, particularly related to the wind events that we've seen over the last few years in terms of responding to particularly debris management type of situations. And so we're hoping that this tool will help us in real time in terms of how we evaluate damage to the community on wind events, not just flooding events, although you can use it obviously for both. So that's a nice additional layer that that the chief has added in this year in terms of making sure we have sufficient number of staff that are trained up on how to use that damage assessment tool. Because if we're in the thick of a major wind event that's like a derecho level event that's created a lot of damage in the community, we need a lot of hands to help us because we've got parks, public works, public safety doing operations. We might need assistance from other departments to help us with the damage assessment side. So that's a kind of part of the goal of rolling out this app, this tool.
and we'll know that answer at about 3:00 tomorrow if we're ready or not. But no, all in all, great evolution and got some neat things to work on for next year. But we're in an excellent spot for
Thanks
the
for the
event.
update.
Anything further?
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, maybe we'll start on your end.
All right. One bit of harder news. So as the council's aware, we've been in litigation with a particular residential property owner that's been renting their house on 80th Place. We did, following a hearing on a contempt hearing, the judge decided to reverse a number of the charges or court fines or penalties that had been levied on that particular property owner in the past. So we are evaluating our options between staff and the legal team of where we may go next. I can report that the property owner has made the vast majority, almost all of the improvements that we had requested. But yet there's still some things hanging out there that we're evaluating. So not the news that we were looking for in terms of having leverage of trying to see some different kinds of results there. But we're still working on it. But I'll share that in more detail with you in my weekly report in terms of the court order that came down. Just a reminder on a couple of upcoming events. Chamber annual event on March 4th. So please let Peter I know if you're interested in attending that. I think we've had the details in the month or the weekly update for you. So let us know. So we'll make sure we get you registered for that. I know a number of you have reached out and indicated your interest in the DC trip. So please have those keep coming in with that. And then I'll share that list with the mayor in terms of what we will do this year for the DC trip. Another item, this is a reminder in the weekly update, we did put some draft dates out there for August for strategic planning. I know a few of you have gotten back to me, so please take a look at those dates. Let me know. I'd love to get those locked in because I know when we get into summer, the calendars get crazy pretty fast with summer vacations and trips. So we're hopefully getting those locked in on the calendar. Did want to mention that, and a bit of really good news, it appears that a congressional appropriation has been secured of $1 million with Congressman Nunn for Alice's Road Corridor with us and the city of Waukee. So we've gotten notice on that earlier this week. And so we will be connecting with the congressman's office in terms of coordination that announcement, and I'm sure there'll be some opportunities to share that news here coming up a little bit later this spring. But happy to see that. That's one that we've been waiting on for a little bit in terms of it's $1 million less that will have to come from local taxpayers to fund a major regional corridor like Alice's Road. So we're happy to see that. So some bit of really good news there. Lastly, wanted to mention, Councilmember Weaver got some of the communications on this earlier today, about a week and a half ago. Staff had received a pretty lengthy letter from a law firm that representing Norfolk Southern Railroad, looking at initiating proceedings of abandonment of the rail line in Clive, actually starting in Des Moines through Windsor Heights, Clive, Urbandale, all the way up to Grimes. So the rail spur that comes across 86th Street in Swanson. And so that could be a short process or a very, very long process. There's a lot of unknowns there. The MPO, though, has been made aware of it by all the member communities that are impacted, and they're coordinating a regional look at what this opportunity could present. I did also have a conversation with Clive's only customer on that rail line. So it's owned by Norfolk Southern, leased by Iowa Interstate. Chicago Bridge and Iron is the only customer. And so they are watching these proceedings. Didn't get any definitive word of what the position they're going to take formally with the Railroad Commission on it. Of course, Beiser Lumber up in Grimes is the other major customer on this line. So we'll see what this holds for the future, but we're sorting through the 60 pages of communication on that to know what it means for Clive and what it could present some substantial opportunities for Clive in the future in terms of if that line was abandoned, conversion to trails, also the crossings on Swanson, which we've wanted to fix and get in better shape. But again, this might not be this could take some time to work through. So more to come on that, but just wanted to make the council aware of that opportunity. And that's all I have, Your Honor, unless
Any
there's
questions for Matt? Lisa, anything legal?
No report, Your Honor.
Bree,
Nothing to report.
Susan?
I attended the Bravo event
Yes.
Saturday night. It was wonderful and large attendance. I haven't heard the numbers. There were other communities that were not represented, but our neighboring community to the east had 2 tables.
Oh, my.
So it just was a variety. And then there was an update today about watershed management authorities in Polk County. And it was a reminder to me to tell this group how concerning it is to everyone that there are high levels of human E. coli that were found in studies that were done last year throughout our waterways. And of course, agricultural runoff and other things are of concern too.
Like a sewer leak?
But for this year, there will be efforts coordinated through Drake University to try to identify where that's coming from. It's likely old sewer systems, some of that kind of thing.
Right. Or
But
septic. one of the two.
It was found that a lot of waterways are just not fit for getting in and swimming. So be aware.
Do you have any good news for us?
The Bravo event was fun.
Okay.
Okay.
Should have ended with that.
I think maybe so.
All right, Eric.
Attended the MAC meeting with the mayor, went over some regional issues, also attended the ribbon cutting for New Clive Business Health Source with the Clive Chamber. That's all, Mayor.
Ted?
I have nothing tonight.
No report tonight, Your Honor.
Pete?
One question for the council tonight. We are firing up the machinery for our next resident survey. We will be in the field in April and May with results in June and reports in July so that you can use that data to make informed decisions in August. One thing we need to get in place, though, before we have anything out there in the field is our set of special questions for this year's survey. Matt and I and the executive team have been discussing a host of options. I've got 5 just put out there tonight just to see if some initial reactions that you may have. This isn't necessarily an exhaustive list, so if you have another idea, we'd love to hear it. So bring that into consideration. One would be rec programming, trying to feel out if people want some new offerings or offerings for specific groups. Seniors, for example, would be one where a lot of rec programs across in our neighboring communities have some pretty robust senior programming in rec, not just library. Irrigation, smart water use, we talked about that tonight. Community planning, so community strategic planning. This is one Matt and I have been spitballing a little bit, thinking about this fall, early winter into the beginning of next year with to new members on the council and a number of years since the core sort of goals of the strategic plan have been robustly sort of re-envisioned or reconsidered. Would this be a time where the community would like to do a bigger community engagement type effort on that to assess, maybe not change, maybe just to reaffirm again, but would we want to go out and engage the community in a more robust way on that? Housing investments, we talked about that a little bit tonight, and that's on the strategic plan. And then how does the community feel about the city's use of AI today and where it might go in the future? So some early ideas. Don't need to get head nods tonight, but if you've got one of those that sounds like it's a particularly good one, you can drop me a note. And we will be coming back with a recommendation for council and a broader discussion.
About like trail usage and e-scooters and.
That could be a great one, yeah.
Can you send us those questions? I'm sorry, Mayor.
No, go
Can you
ahead.
send in the follow-up tomorrow? Can you include those? We can take a look at them?
You bet.
Pete and Matt's update, please.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Anything on the Harbach Center?
You good, Dad? Yep.
Any other suggestions for Pete? Anything else?
There you are.
Matthew, do you have anything down on your end? You should have a card with you that has the DART network. I thought it'd be helpful to have something that, if someone asks you what are the new routes, what's going to happen, it's all on just an easy to look at guide for you. We talked a lot tonight about water, so I wanted to give you an update on that. This will reinforce a lot of what's already been said, but the nitrate removal facility expansion study, the kickoff meeting for that group was held last month. They hope to have a report out in May. They're going to try to determine whether the existing nitrate removal facility can be expanded or not. So, and then we talked about Saylorville expansion. That construction should begin late this year with completion in 2029. And nitrate facility is still going full bore. The water that they're pulling in exceeds 10 mgl, so that's why the nitrates have to be removed. But just reinforce, the finished drinking water continues to meet all safe drinking water standards. Just reinforce that. And the after action review is in its final stages. They should have something to the board in March with formal adoption in April. And Pete, I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
Just that it's been a productive and robust after action process that Tammy and staff have taken the board through and other stakeholders through. So I feel like Clive's had many opportunities to be heard and that our contributions have been appreciated.
And the final item loops back to what we've been talking about all evening, but with the irrigation, there's a plan for extensive communications in various levels. And so they're going to focus on things that we've already heard tonight: sprinkler system tune-ups, proper even odd watering, correct sprinkler head alignment, watering early morning, late evening, all those things that we talked about before as far as good practices. So anyway, we'll be talking a lot about water. I just want to give you a brief update on where things stand today. Anything else for the good of the order? Otherwise, we'll adjourn at 8:08.